familiar with a service called Restream, you really might want to learn about which, and so but basically whatever I do with Restream. Well, anyway, first of all, let me just say hello to everybody. Hi, this is Jan Landy. Welcome to the Mastermind. I hope everybody here is in a great mood, and I want to thank you all for coming. This is a place where we all come to share our ideas of how to survive the COVID times so that we're here when things get better. And that's what it is. So welcome, welcome, welcome. And as I was talking about the bank situation, so what my recommendation is if you have a business, you really need two different banks. No matter what your representative tells you, how much he'll come in wearing skimpy clothes and try to convince you that this is the best bank in the world, whatever, or they give you the free pens. I like those free pens, but why do they have a chain on them? That's what I want to know. What I guess so they don't fall off your pocket. I don't know.
A UI order.
They don't give free pens out anymore. They don't give free anything, You just have to say, this is what you do. You sit with the banker and you ask her for some water, and when she goes, then you take the pens. That's all there is to it. That's it. And she says, "Where's my pen?" I said, "I don't know. I haven't seen it." So don't do that. Don't do that. I'm only kidding. I've never done that. At least not recently. All right. So anyway, that's about the size. But welcome, everybody. So anybody have anything they want to share? Because believe it or not, the reason why I am not prepared today is because of what's going on with me in my banking situation. And the banking situation. And finally, so for those who don't know, I was hit up with bank fraud. And I finally figured out what the bank fraud was. About 3 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago, my company was hit up with fraud by a person impersonating me, Jan Landy, applied for unemployment insurance with my company. And even though I stopped it in the nick of time, I don't think it was the nick of time. What they told me was because it was an out-of-state claim, they were paying it right away. And meanwhile, people here in Las Vegas who actually really need the money can't get it because they're paying fraud claims from out of state. Anyway, beside that, so they got my social security number and then they got my corporate ID. So I am figuring that is how that they tapped in, and Bank of America, fortunate enough for all of us, caught it before it became a problem for anybody but me. That's it. That's the way I would look at it. The problem, hey, Jan, the problem is yours, not ours. We're only the guardians of your money until there's a problem, and then it's all your problem. And what I was saying earlier is that when you call somebody up on customer service, they will tell you whatever they want to tell you, whatever comes into their mind, whether they know it's true or not, but they make it sound so believable, and of course, that's what I've been going through all day. So today they closed down my other accounts, but when I got to the bottom of it, they found out it was their mistake, bank error, not in my favor. But nonetheless, I had to deal with them opening up the accounts. So today, I got that settled, and now all my accounts are back open, except for the ones that were closed for fraud. And that, I'm still waiting on that money. So anyway, that's where I'm at. So I apologize for not having an itinerary for today's show, except we're going to open it up. What I wanted to say in the invitation was this will be a bullshit session. Anybody can say whatever they want, and it doesn't even have to be true. What the hell? Just bullshit me. That's about it. It's like, isn't there a game show like that on TV, To Tell the Truth? So let's play To Tell the Truth. So my name is Buster Hancock. I own the Bank of America. All right, so ask me any questions you like about the bank to see if I'm really the Bank of America president. All right.
I think Wells Fargo is even worse, though.
Yeah, well, Wells Fargo, man, I don't know how anybody would have an account with Wells Fargo, because it seems to me whenever you read about Wells Fargo, it's always that they've tried to give you a car loan, they've opened up extra accounts in your name, they've given you credit cards that you don't need, all of this stuff that that I've heard about Wells Fargo. But I haven't had an account with Wells Fargo, so I don't know.
The CEO of Wells Fargo, I don't remember where I saw it, on CNN or something, was saying that they don't have more black people because they're not as qualified. And then somebody said, qualified? The white people in your bank have run it into the ground.
Yeah, I would think that right now, as you could see, we have a diversity session going on here. As you look around the faces here, and there's nothing we could do about it. I mean, it's like I was reading an article about the diversity aspect of and women participating in various functions, but it just seems that they're willing to say that I want my fair share here. I want to be participating. I don't want to be discriminated against. But yet, when you make an offer to them to join, they don't want to join. And I read that about a few industries that are happening. I'm sure that the more glamorous industries like the model business or the film business or the production business itself of television, I'm sure that that's not where challenge is for them finding people to participate. But in the pro world that we're in with sound, light, staging, and video, there are not a lot of women that own businesses. Does anybody here? I'm trying to think of a few. Lori from Bulbs, and then there's Leanne from one of my competitors, SGH. I've invited her to come in. I've even invited my competitor, Muffy from Jan L. Case. She can't make it today, but she came in once. You guys might remember that. But the reality is, it's very difficult to get people that don't look like us to come in and join us. And and then people say, "Wow, it's your fault." Well, it's not my fault. I've got an open invitation for anybody who wants to come. This is not like the secret club. This is not like the Proud Boys where we got to kill somebody to get into the room. This is just one of those things where we can, that we're open for business to discuss legitimate ideas. So, anybody have any ideas that we could discuss that are legitimate?
Oh no, Jan.
Oh, good. Jazz.
How's it going?
As you can tell, it's going amazingly well.
I can tell. So I wanted to share, I did a webinar earlier this month about how to start looking for a job. And so I'll share the link with it if anybody wants to check it out, or if you have people that are looking, particularly coming from the live events industry. As you may be aware, I was one of the victims of the industry a few months ago and just couldn't afford to take a break from getting a paycheck. So I hit it really hard. And I took not only my experience from that, but also my experience in previous job searches. And somebody actually paid me to give them a webinar about how to look for a job. So I'll post that here. And if anybody wants to check it out, you can check it out.
Yeah, I think that's a great thing. One of the things that we realize right now is that the biggest problem that we're going to have when we come back is going to be the labor pool, because what we do is technically oriented. So if you don't have the technical experience, or you have the years of experience, I mean, let's look at like a guy like, like Ken Newman. Ken, how long have you been an engineer for housing?
I've been doing sound for a long time. 40 some years.
Right. And you're Bruce. What about you? Bruce, I'm going to ask you to unmute. I'm still asking you to unmute, but while you're there, I will just tell you that I think this is a great idea. Go ahead, Bruce. Go ahead. Talk to me.
You got me?
I got you, buddy.
That's so weird.
You're in like Flynn, man.
40 years, late 70s.
All right.
Yeah. Long time.
All right, I think you should have a sound man auctioneer. All right. We have Ken Newman. Give me your details. Barry Manilow. Shirley MacLaine. All right. What's my bid? What's my bid for Kenny Newman? Right, going once, going twice.
Well, I thought it was interesting. I thought it was interesting that you said engineer, because Chris Leonard on the Signal to Noise podcast Facebook page asked a general question of people today. He said, should we really call ourselves audio engineers? And to which I responded, I don't mind if somebody calls me that, but really I'm just a sound guy.
Well, that's it. Is that what the T-shirt says?
Realistically. Anybody here have a degree in audio engineering?
Exactly.
Yes, there is somebody in this room that does have a degree in audio engineering.
I know two people, and I know hundreds of sound guys.
I have electrical engineering, which isn't
that's pretty damn close.
Wow, that's amazing.
So yeah. I don't know about
John's
you guys.
trying to say something. What's up, John?
Go ahead, John.
I don't hear you though, John. I don't know why.
Well, let me talk for him. Well, I want to tell you, I have a degree. No. Okay, John, talk. Get John.
So
hit
your
it.
lips moved then, John, and I didn't hear you. So maybe you have the wrong input selected or something.
Well, you
Because
see that. You see now you've got something from the sound man, John.
Oh,
You
it's
see,
muted.
that's it. We're here to guide you through the principles of.
What the heck?
Well, you're muted now.
All right, this makes good good television. That's what I want to say. So anyway, so somebody tell me something, because already, if I've got I I keep saying this is not the Jan Landy show, but it just seems like you guys want it to be the Jan Landy show. So let me tell you about my dating life. I'm very depressed.
Oh, Jan, TMI.
All right, I have a question.
Go ahead.
And we got a bunch of people on here that have been around a long time. So this is a great question. As you know, you 40-year guys, when we were in school, I was a music major and I got a certificate in the recording arts. And you could only go to about 3 places around the country to get that. I think it was Juilliard, USC, and State of New York at Fredonia, which is where I went. But I never got my degree, right? So I'm certified, whatever the hell that means. But many people ask me now, will you talk to my kid, because my kid's a junior in high school, and point him in a direction where he can, learn your trade. And other than the Phoenix, there's a school in Phoenix, I don't remember the name of it, recording. I know about 4 guys that I have great respect for that went there that actually know their shit, and it's pretty good. And other than that, that's really, without going hugely into debt, the only place I know of where you can actually learn how to do stuff correctly. And what I have found is, nowadays you can get a degree in this anywhere, but they don't teach you how to troubleshoot. They don't give you any ear training. They don't teach you. All these guys just think they're going to walk in the room and mix a show. And I just, listen, you got to make me think I can't live without you before I let you climb behind this console. And then when you're worthy, I'll give you a shot, but it's really wild because, the 3 things that I swear by, they don't teach, which is troubleshooting. What my teacher called it black box theory, right? All the signal goes down through the black boxes. The signal doesn't get there. You have to track down which box isn't working and then replace it, right? Ear training, which is hugely important, which is really easy to do. And let's see, there was one other thing that I don't remember off the top of my head, but do any of you have any input on that sort of thing?
Well, when we started,
any schools that I know of that we could direct some of these people so they're not going to community college and playing on a Mackie and coming out thinking they know something.
Hey, Bruce, Jim Yakubuski? I think he just started a school. I forget what it's called, but look it up on, just Google Jim Yakubuski, and you'll find his school, I bet, because he's an excellent engineer.
Actually,
He's
there's
an engineer.
Phoenix is the Recording Institute, I think it's called, the Recording Institute in Phoenix.
Well, they have Full Sail. I think Full Sail
That's
is
what Bruce was talking about, the place that they don't teach you except,
Yes,
the end result. They get you the end result, but they don't tell you how to get there, really.
Basically, what I knew about Full Sail is when Full Sail first started, it wasn't a part of Miami University, and it was actually a pretty good place to go. Now, everybody, other than lighting designers, I've met some really good lighting designers out of there, but a lot of the Full Sail sound people, they teach them music business or and all this other kind of stuff, and they really don't teach them how to do anything for real. And they come waltzing in the door with all these expectations. And I tell them all the time. I said, if you go to Full Sail, I don't want you to tell me that, because let's just get to know each other and figure this out. I'll tell you.
Bruce, there's also a place in New York City. I think it's in New York City called Institute of Audio Research, and that was around when I was a teenager. And I remember a guy named John Warham invited me to attend a class at the Institute of Audio Research. Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Anyway, he invited me to attend a class, and I attended a class, but it was I didn't have the money to actually go to the school. But anyway, turns out that then years later, a friend of mine works there and was like the admissions director of the Institute of Audio Research many years later. A guy that I got to be friends with, and then after I got to be more friendly with him, I realized, hey, I don't even know what you do for a living. He said, oh, I'm the admissions director at Institute of Audio Research. Oh, how about that? So anyway, that's another good, reputable school, and that's in New York, and it's probably expensive too. But
how good the Musicians Institute is in L.A. They've got
And
real
then-
recording studios in there.
And there's also that place in LA called Soundmasters or something.
Right.
Does that
I
still
don't
exist,
know.
David?
Yes, I heard
Musicians
that.
Institute also has a live sound program. They got a really nice PA system in their school and everything like that. But
Is it? Do you know if it's they teach them the right stuff?
I don't know. If you want my opinion, I think the most important skill to have is people skills,
It is.
followed by troubleshooting skills. If you don't
Right.
have that, you can forget about the rest of it.
Right. I mean, I can't tell you how many people walk up to me and say, where's the echo knob? It's like you got to go in the closet and get out the echo. There's no echo knob. Of course, on digital consoles there is now, but a lot of people don't
best.
realize. You have to build this stuff. Oh, I remember.
Look, Ryan just put the link to Jim's school. It's called the Mix Institute. I would have a feeling that would be a really, really great place to learn, because Jim, number one, is a great mixer, and number two is a great guy, and both, he's just really exceptional person. So I think that's probably a really good place, and it's probably in North Carolina where he lives, but I'm not sure.
So the Hyatt in San Diego, right? The Manchester Hyatt. We did the grand opening of that place, and there's 2 huge ballrooms, and we had Huey Lewis in one room and this corporate bullshit in the other. And we had huge amounts of students from the local colleges that they told us were going to be utility people and A2s, and they were all audio, and lighting, students, right? So we walk in a ballroom with absolutely nothing in there, and like my crew of 8 said, "Where's the PA?" And it's in the truck. They said, "What do you mean?" I says, "Well, we're going to go down and get it out, and we're going to build it. And you know what? If it doesn't work, we're going to fix it. And the last thing we do is mix the show. And then at midnight, we have to put it back in the truck." Nobody showed up the next day. We were screwed.
Yeah, they thought it was come in and mix, right?
They still had it. Yeah. And this was way a long time ago when the Hyatt was being built,
All of a sudden, they wanted a recording engineer.
Oh my God, I couldn't believe it. That was the beginning of years of people that, they go to these schools, they don't learn anything.
I went to the school of
that
David
either.
Dansky. David Dansky taught me everything I know, because when I was like 18 years old and I was just starting out, I met this guy, David Dansky. He was working. He was the band's engineer, and he was like, "Oh, this is how you do it, man." And it's been really, really helpful.
And what band was that, Kenny?
That was a band called Mandrill.
Right.
You did Mandrill for a while?
I did Mandrill from the beginning.
Wow. Wasn't Boris Minart, didn't he do Mandrill too?
Oh, he did them in the last, in the 2000s.
Yeah, because I went to a bunch of gigs with him.
We're talking in the 70s, Bruce.
Long time ago. Wow.
But the album came out the end of 1970.
They were good.
They were one of the first bands to record at Jimi Hendrix's studio, Electric Ladyland.
Wow.
Lady. So I was unemployed. I didn't know what I was going to do. And I had been an electrical engineer and hated it. I didn't like the people. They were so straight. It was just...
What a great background, though.
Yeah, well, yeah. And back then in 1970, when we still had the Altec mixers with the green knobs on them.
The green knobs, yeah.
Vocal masters, But the band, I met a guy who worked for the manager. The manager was the guy who put the Beatles in Shea Stadium. So he was a pretty good name in New York, Sid Bernstein. And he said, "Yeah, they got a band coming out. They need a sound engineer and they need a road manager." I said, "I'm an engineer." So, instantly I had to learn what's dynamic and condenser, what's balanced, unbalanced lines. But
Right.
with my background, it was pretty simple. So, and the band was a huge hit right away. So I didn't have to do the working in the shop. I still was driving the truck in between gigs, me and the...
Yeah, everybody did, I think, in the beginning, yeah.
But, the whole thing started with building your own consoles back then.
Wow,
Nobody was
yeah.
even doing that. Or, that's all they were doing was building consoles. Nobody wanted the Altec 1280 or whatever that was.
Yeah, the voice of the theaters. If I remember correctly, when I met David, he was 5'10", but he had to carry those speakers around. Now he's only 5'8". So it's
I had 4 of those things. Yeah,
that and the Leslie B3. That's a good job bringing that up the stairs to Max's
Hammond
Kansas
B3,
City.
yeah, sure.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's a gig, yeah.
Yeah.
The thing about Mandrill was that they were one of the most talented bands and diversified bands around. They had 22 instruments. For my very first band, not only did I have guitar, bass, and drums and gong, but I had a keyboard player who had clavinet, B3 Rhodes, and vibes. And nobody knew how to mic vibes back then. I had to go out and find pickups for them, and I actually found it. And then the percussion section, and the same guys who did percussion were a horn band. So they did everything from jazz to R&B. They played with the Deep Purple. They played with the Allman Brothers. They played with James Brown. They played with Stevie Wonder. They played with the Average White Band. And so my education was like amazing for the first band. So I was with them for 5 years. And then
Wow, that's great.
And then after 5 years, I saw they weren't going to get any bigger than they were. You know, at one point they were co-headlining with Earth, Wind, and Fire. One would headline, and then Earth, Wind, and Fire, you know, wrote great songs and had Phil Bailey's voice. And they took off, and Mandrell just stayed as a great show band. There are people today who'll still say it's the best shows they ever saw live, but it was time for me to move on. And then, but during that time is when I met young Ken Newman.
Young Ken Newman.
In New Jersey.
Yeah, I was working for Jersey Joe. I was the kid working for the sound company.
So the Phoenix School is Conservatory of Recording Arts. I've known a few guys come out of there that are actually pretty good. So
yeah, I mean, I always thought I have this opinion that is recording is one thing, live sound is quite a different animal. The only thing they have in common is audio and some of the equipment, but the practices and the standards and what mindset you use to approach each of those trades is quite different. So that's why I've always said, recording studio, do they really want to train us for a recording studio gig? No, let's find a live sound training grounds. And I have a feeling that Jim Yakubowski thing is exactly that.
Oh, that's great to hear. Okay.
And that brings us to a message from our sponsor, Jan Landy's
B of A.
Jan Landy's Recording Institute of Technology. We will teach you how to be an engineer. Okay, thank you very much. Let's move on to the next.
Now, so Harry Nettie had a school a couple of years ago in Austin, Texas. Do you know Harry Nettie, Bruce?
No.
Okay, well, anyway, real good live sound engineer. Usually did monitors, but anyway, he had a partner, and they started this school, and I have a feeling they had not succeeded, but you might Google Harry Nettie. His last name is spelled Netti, and if I can remember the name of the school, maybe it was Austin Audio Academy, maybe, or Audio Academy of Austin, or something like that. Oh, what's this? You got a certificate from Audio? What's that you got there, Steve? Come on, tell us.
Hold on, hold it up. Wait 1 second. I'll spotlight you.
Anybody recognize that?
There you go.
Atchafalaya. Appalachia Sound Recording Workshop.
Is that written in Japanese? Really? Let's see that one again.
There you go.
Excellent.
Nice, very nice.
They were building recording studios on their property when I was there, so I got to kind of watch from the ground up some of the work that was being done. And then we got to go work in several studios in Columbus. And,
it would be interesting to hear how you guys got started doing what you're doing. Like David told us how he got started.
Actually, David didn't tell us the whole story. And David's first job, for whatever reason, I was so fascinated by David's first job. That's how I became friends with him. When he told me what he was doing I said, I got to be friends with this guy. That's amazing, And it had nothing to do with the strip club, and nothing to do with drug dealing. Really, seriously. Tell him about your story, Dave.
Oh, when I was flying to Chicago every day?
Yeah.
Well, my first job out of college, I'm an electrical engineer, and I got to work for this company in New Rochelle. I was living in White Plains, New York, and they had created FM technology. Has the stereo band was I can't think of the name, a subcarrier, and if it wasn't a stereo radio station, that subcarrier was sitting there doing nothing. So Muzak was being broadcast over that, and whatever else they wanted to do. So this company decided they were going to put a news broadcast on subcarrier FM into airplanes before they landed in the city. And they took New York and Chicago as a test market, and TWA planes, and they put the receivers, those long, skinny receivers, in the belly of the plane, put the antenna on the bottom, and then had a a little studio where they had Reuters and API. And the guy who in New York used to say, "It's 10 o'clock. Do you know where your children are?" That guy during the day was at my company doing a 5-minute news broadcast for Chicago and New York. And before the plane would land, the flight attendant, the stewardess back then, would activate it. And when the the beginning of the program came around, it would come through the PA system and say, national news, the guys were walking on the moon at the time, and then the Chicago White Sox are playing, and there's traffic on the Van Ryn Expressway. And then in New York, it would be the same thing. And my job was to go to LaGuardia Airport every morning and get on the shuttle and fly to Chicago, listen to the flight, talk to the flight attendants every time they came in once an hour, and then fly home back to LA every day. And what was interesting is it was a very competitive market. TWA, United, Continental, they all had these planes going back and forth to Chicago with no luggage. You carry on your luggage. It's all for business people. So the flight back, they used to have staged deli sandwiches and a little keg of Heineken on the cart.
Rudy's Delight.
Yeah, this was my job every day for about 6 months, was to do that.
Those were the days, huh?
And then they put me in the lab, and I was building test equipment and stuff. But the company CEO passed away, and all the money disappeared, and they said, we got to let you go. And I went, thank you. And so I collected unemployment, and I figured out what I wanted to do, and that's how I got into.
What years were that roughly?
But what was that?
What year roughly?
69.
Ooh, 69.
Yeah.
And somewhere in there, you fit a trip to Woodstock to attend the Woodstock
I
Festival.
did that, right. I had just been working a few months, so I went up to Woodstock. But the other thing that was interesting is that they had the subcarrier FM thing. They were also transmitting data to supermarkets for them to do inventories at night and to have Nixie tube displays offering sales and stuff. So they had two contests. But they used to bring in Len Feldman to work on the subcarrier. And Len Feldman is the guy who invented 4 quadraphonic FM broadcasts. So that was kind of cool that, Len and I got to work together. Of course, I understood only half of what he was doing, but two channel. I understood. Channel, I got lucky. That's why Jen liked it, because I was talking to stewardesses every day.
That's right. So anyway, who else wants to share how they got in the business? Anybody else want to share? Come on, somebody must want to share.
Kenny, tell them about Jersey Joe. The guy was a legend, and nobody knows him.
Well, let me give you a little background first. So I'm like 13, 14 years old, and I'm the kid at high school doing AV stuff, and we at our high school we actually had a TV station, black and white of course, but we had a TV station, and somehow I got connected with this guy that was a couple years older than me. His name was Bob Chapman, and he had a little recording studio in his house, and anyway, I got really intrigued by the whole recording studio vibe in his house. It was like, wow, look at this. And listen to how amazing everything sounds. It was amazing. He actually had a U87, and he had Ampex tape decks, and he had all this way cool stuff. It was amazing. Anyway, so I got the bug, right, from Bob Chapman. Got started, just going over to his house, riding my bicycle over to Bob Chapman's house, 6 miles each way to help him out every Sunday. Worked, if you want to call it that. Played in his studio every Sunday, and then I was in the AV room one day, or the TV room, I should say, and some band was coming to our school to do a concert, and they said, we have an 8-track tape from A&R Studios in New York City. Can you guys mix it down and maybe make a commercial for us? And I was like, no, we don't have 8-track playback here, but I can fix you up with a place, because I had already, from my friend Bob, knew about local 8-track studios and so forth. Anyway, the point is, one thing leads to another. I'm working for a local band. Now I'm recording them, and I'm working for a local band. And I meet this guy in the process of buying some new equipment for the band. I meet this guy, Marvin Welkowitz. And Marvin Welkowitz is a salesman where was he a salesman? At Martin Audio in New York City, where we bought some pro audio gear in the 70s, right? Because you couldn't just go out and buy a PA system like you can now, right? So we went to Martin Audio and got these pieces of a PA system. I put it all together. Marvin was pretty impressed. So he said, hey, you need a job? I could get you a job with this guy, Jersey Joe. And so I go down to meet Jersey Joe, and he's this old Italian guy. He's right off the boat practically kind of guy, and he owns a little sound system, and he's in New Brunswick area, New Jersey, which is kind of centrally located in New Jersey. So I'm like, yeah, sure, I could work for you. So, I get this job working for Jersey Joe, and I worked on his sound systems with his stuff, with all the concerts that he did sound for. He also rented pianos and organs, so we delivered pianos and Hammond organs to various venues and stuff.
He had
It
all
was
that.
quite an interesting gig.
He had
But-
all the Hammond organs in the New York area. He was a big guy.
Right, and he had the 9-foot Steinway that Keith Emerson demanded to have every time Keith Emerson was in the New York area. He had to have Joe's 9-foot Steinway. It's pretty cool, but the sound system was just a little bit cutting edge. He had a bunch of Altec 1567 mixers or 1592. Sorry, the solid state ones, 1592 mixers mounted in this console looking frame. And then his technical guy, a guy named, I think his name was Marty or something, right? Marty had inserted API 550 EQs on each channel of these Altec mixers. So he had Altec 1592s with API 550 EQs on them. It was pretty impressive. But in all, it was just a 30-channel mixer, mono, of course.
Huge.
And yeah, it was pretty big. It was 3 rack widths, 3 racks wide, and then whatever it took to mount these mixers in there. It was very bizarre, but it was Jersey Joe, and he had things like he had a quad, as in 4 channels, 4-way crossover that he had his guy build for him, and it was like this revolutionary electronic crossover, 4-way, 4 channels, and with that quad crossover and his speaker systems, I ended up working for a month at the Ziegfeld Theater in New York City. David, you probably never heard about this, but the Ziegfeld Theater in New York City, where they played the movie, ladies and gentlemen, whoops, I'm losing my earpiece. They played the movie, Ladies and Gentlemen, the Rolling Stones, which was a 35 millimeter film that played at the Ziegfeld for about a month. And it was basically just concert footage, but they had this quad soundtrack, and so they needed a quad sound system, so we put a quad sound system in the theater, and it was pretty bizarre. But anyway, we did lots of local gigs and so forth with Jersey Joe's homemade cabinets and all the crazy stuff that Jersey Joe did. And he even he had a semi that he owned. He drove the semi, and he had a few straight trucks. I and his son drove the straight trucks. It was pretty funny. What a guy, right, Joe?
Oh, yeah.
Right, David?
Tell him
Thank
about
you.
the stages that he built. The back to sound systems with the scissor lifts.
I never experienced that. I remember him talking about how he was going to turn a truck into a stage, but
He took a truck, he built it with scissor lifts so that the whole bed of the truck went up, including the roof. So when it came down, it was sealed, and he put in a full sound system in each truck. And then he did a Beach Boys tour where he just backed the trucks up to the stage, hit the button, and the PA went up in the air, did the show, and came back down again. And he built that stuff. So the guy was really interesting.
Crazy guy.
Back
Yeah.
in the day. The thing I remember the most.
This is in the 70s, like the mid 70s, by the way.
Yeah, he had a heavy Italian accent. So he'd get on the mic and he'd go, a test.
Test, a 1 or 2.
A test.
To me. He would always, when he would be pushing some case and he'd want you to push it towards him, he would say, to me.
Yeah. Well, that's some good memories you have, and I have a feeling that I am going to donate this show to the Smithsonian so that we can keep this for posterity's sake forever. Now, Steve, I want to hear about your first gig before I tell you about my first gig.
I started, I had an older brother played music, so that's when I got started. Somebody had to move the gear and run it. And back then we were building coffee can light shows with dimmers, boxes full of them. And we'd build our own Perkins knockoff cabinets and throw an Altec 808 horns up in there. And just, that's how I got started doing it, just working with them and helping them out. And went through the regular routine of life, got divorced after a while,
Yeah.
had a couple kids.
Hey, who would have
Got
thought you'd
laid
be
off from the
reverting
telephone
back to
company.
those days? Who
But
would have
I've
thought
been
you'd be
doing it for
reverting
about
back?
50 years now.
Yeah, everything old is new again,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So who else do we have here that wants to share? Somebody want
I'm
to
curious.
share?
I'm really curious how Bruce got started, though. Bruce, can you tell us what your start in the sound business was?
Well, you guys probably, some of you older guys, probably remember Sheldon Leonard, right?
Oh yeah.
Comedian, right?
Yeah, he had a company in upstate New York, the Red Hook area, called Rock City Sound, which is now
Part of Firehouse.
Firehouse.
It's changed hands a couple times and gotten hugely big and hugely good. And it's
Wow, are you going to tell me you had something to do with Sheldon?
Sheldon cut down A7s and phase linear amplifiers, and I used to help him do the Dutchess County Fair when I was in high school. And he would his little sound company would do the Battle of the Bands at the high school, and I was playing the drums in the band, and I would help him do those shows, right? And then after high school, I went to school and took the recording class, and a friend of mine that I met in the recording class was working with a band called DC Star, who you guys from the East Coast may recognize from the late 70s. They were a East Coast club touring band out of Washington, D.C. And after school, my friend got a job with Crest and basically handed me the keys to the band. And I bought some gear with my school loan, which my dad never forgave me for, although I paid it off in 2 years. And I went on the road with DC Star, and I was with them for about 3 or 4 years. And then I did, a friend of mine had a recording studio in a field, where the acoustic treatment was bales of hay in a barn out in the middle of this field. It was great. And he called me one day when I was in town, and he said, I got to do this corporate show. Will you help me? And I said, well, yeah, what's a corporate show? And he says, well, we're going to, Dutchess County is known for their train buildings, and IBM is doing a show in one of their train buildings. And it's a little event, and they're going to do a slideshow, which I had no clue what that was then. And we got to produce some train music for the slideshow. So I said, all right. So I drove my van out to his house, and we loaded his recording studio. We had an 80-8, and we had a couple of 2-tracks and a Tascam mixer. And we spent all night in the Red Hook train station wiring microphones all over the damn place, and recorded all these train noises Monday morning when everybody was commuting to New York. And then brought everything back to the studio. And since my schooling was recording studio stuff, right, we edited he wrote some train music and got these people to play it. And we set up all the effects on tape loops going around the room with take-up spools on pencils. And the tape machines were pulling the tape around the room. It was like something from a Disney ride. It was so funny. I remember it like it was yesterday. And we did this music track that was about 6 minutes long. And I took it to Ulster County train station and met Randy Will, who owned Staging Techniques at the time. And I basically mixed in the effects of what I had on the 8-track into the music for the train module. And after the show, he said, you ever do a corporate show before? And I said, this is a corporate show, right? And he says, yeah, it's my first one. And he says, well, I got a show in New Orleans in 2 weeks for Safeco Insurance. So if I fly you down there, will you go stay at the Hyatt and do the show for a week? And I thought, airplane? Hyatt? Fuck yeah. Instead of sleeping in the back of the truck and on a bus and everything else, right? So basically I did my first show with Staging Techniques in New York, and I worked for them as a freelancer for 2 years out of their office in New York. And then they moved to LA with John Bromberg and a couple of guys. We started the LA office. They moved me here to start that office. And I left there in 88, went to AVHQ, and I was at AVHQ until 2000. And when they imploded, Wayne and Gary and all of us, started our own little businesses and been freelancing ever since.
Wow.
So there it is in a nutshell.
That's very, very interesting. And I know.
Wow. So that's so Shelton Lindsay. Is that who you're talking about? Shelton Lindsay?
Yeah.
Because Shelton and I go way back to the, when would that have been? Around 76, 77, somewhere in there. Yeah. The band that you had your DC Star band. Well, I had a band called Fandango that was on RCA Records, right? Oh. So this band Fandango was on RCA Records, and there was another band on RCA Records called the Werewolves, right? And we did a promotional tour together. And who provided the sound system? Shelton did, right? Wow. And I was known as the pain in the ass kid that was doing the sound for one of the bands, and then Shelton was doing the sound for the Werewolves. And so we had this like very competitive existence, but it was his equipment. But I would always hear comments from the audience members about how much better it sounded for my band than it did for the Werewolves. But anyway. I
never actually worked for him, but I helped him on the county fair gigs.
Interesting.
We had a lot of concerts at our high school and our junior high school, and this was in the late or mid 70s.
So do you stay in touch with Shelton?
About about 30 years ago, I was doing a show in Vegas and he walked up behind me and said, "Oh my God, is that Bruce?" And I was like, and then he started to tell me, because, divorce and all these medical problems and all this, oh man, and we were kind of kids together, and that was the last time I saw him. So no, I haven't, but I talked to him for about an hour that day, and that was.
Well, I think we're going to have to get him on the panel. That's
yeah, right. So yeah, you should definitely get in touch with Shelton. Now, isn't Shelton working for CT these days, Bruce?
I have no idea.
I know that I got an email from him.
Everybody works for CT at one point or another.
I got him. Well, maybe not these days because of COVID, but maybe a year or two ago, I got an email from him saying that he was now working for CT and he'd love to come and talk about, possibilities of working together or something. I was like, wow, that's interesting. Well,
Kenny,
and I never did get together with him.
I'm still in touch with Shelton, and he's retired now. He left CT, and he's leaving home. He had a liver transplant about 12 years ago or so. So that's what his medical things are. And he's doing okay. Well, living upstate New York.
Is he upstate New York?
Yeah.
Wow.
Up in by the river.
How about financially? Because he and Lee Kalish had it out.
Lee Kalish, yes. Oh, it was a big battle. He told me about that. I felt so bad.
So what do you know, David? Is he okay, or is he starving?
He sold his company to Syntonic, which was Lou Mead.
Right.
I knew he had something to do with Lou Mead.
Right.
And that became Firehouse, right?
And then Firehouse bought out Syntonic.
It was ProMix first, right? Lou Mead was ProMix, and then he sold it to PRG.
ProMix, and that disappeared into PRG. And so he created Syntonic after his non-competitive clause happened.
With
and
Lou,
then he was working for Firehouse as a production head.
Wow. Firehouse.
And then he went to CT, and then he retired.
Wow.
And he doesn't race anymore, but he had open wheel race cars.
Right, like small ones though, right? Small ones or something, right?
Smaller, but still open wheel. Need a mechanic, rebuild the engine after every race, kind of guy.
You should definitely get Shelton on this Zoom call. That would be amazing.
Yeah, that would be fun.
Yeah, that would be amazing. That I'd like to get. I'd like to get Brian on. Brian from Firehouse on. Brian Olson. A lot of people I'd like to get on the show. Engelbert Humperdinck would be a good person to get on the show as well. know,
it's a very small world.
I'm out.
Dave.
Let's
get Paul Anka. I think if I call Paul Anka, if I entice him enough, he'll get on here.
David, were you the one that got fired when one day Engelbert was really drunk?
Nobody ever fires David.
And he put his hand on the wall and said, "Anybody under this height is fired because I don't trust him."
No, I wasn't around for that one. That's some other. That's some other guy. I lasted a year and a half and went through 18 monitor mixers.
Unbelievable!
Oh wow, you counted, huh?
Oh,
it's amazing you could still hear. I mean, really, it was like 150 degrees on that stage.
That's the first time I started getting gray hair. During Engelbert.
Oh, there's some story. One day I think we just have to have a show of Engelbert stories. That's about it.
I don't think we can talk about it.
I forgot
unless he's no longer on this planet.
He's still working.
He's an amazing guy. I had a great time with him.
He was a great singer. Great
voice.
I always said if he could concentrate on singing, that would be fantastic because he sings great.
And I will only give you one bit of advice. Do not play darts with him. I lost a lot of money playing darts with the guy. He's really good. Hey, so Chris, how you doing there? Would you like to tell us about a little bit, seeing this is going into the Smithsonian, I'd like to, have your first gig emboldened forever in the histories and enshrining of the SoundBroker Mastermind Group.
Oh my first gig. Really? Well, it's hard to define what the first gig is when your background goes from studying, installing, working with club bands. The first gig that I probably got money for was had to be a biker band in New Orleans. I went to a concert at the Warehouse and sat back and listened to Emerson, Lake and Palmer and said, I think this is what I want to do. And because it just sounded so amazing. And I just was working with an installation company, and that was the daytime. At nighttime, I was working with with a club band. And so we did a biker party, and it was pretty much a mess. And then I left New Orleans and came down to Miami and started working with the Latin bands down here, and got hooked up with Julio Iglesias for about 11 years and saw the world. And, it just kept going from there.
Holy shit, Chris, are you the one that did sound for Julio in the 80s, like?
Yeah, 81 to
Oh
92.
my God. 81 to what?
92.
Oh my God.
We're sort of back with him, but he's not touring right now. We did a bunch of shows last year for him.
Holy shit. I got to tell you a story, but go continue with your story, but I got to tell you a story.
That's I just been kicking around here and, mixing other artists. And, when I left in 92, there was a lot of stuff with Clare Brothers that I did, a lot of their special events. We did some really nice tours with them. Stevie Ray Vaughan was one of them, and Bon Jovi and a few other groups. And then I got hooked up with Barbara Streisand and at the Millennia, and just stayed with her since now. So, yeah. Anyway.
So you knew Pat Stansfield?
What's that?
You were friends with Pat Stansfield?
I knew Pat. Yep. He did the first. They had a falling out after the Millennia concert, but Patrick was great. Yeah.
Yeah. Because Pat was Neil Diamond's guy, and then he went over with Barbara for a long time.
Yeah, and we hit, Mikey Weiss and all those guys from Neil Diamond came over to do Barbara, and I came in with Bruce Jackson, and then Bruce, of course, departed, and I took over for him, and then he stepped back in, and of course, he died in a plane crash, and since then I've been taking the helm of it. So.
Mm-hmm. And so I take it you know Stan as well?
No, I don't know Stan.
Okay.
No.
Yeah, because Stan has been with Neil ever since day one, I guess, right?
Yeah. We were using. It was Mikey Weiss. It was Richie Bray on stage management, and pretty much a lot of the wardrobe people and those folks came over from Neil, but it was a Clare Brothers tour. And so, yeah, Patrick, it wasn't.
Yep.
I got to mix Barbara 3 different times back in the 80s, which is pretty rare because, once you pick somebody, she sticks with them. But she was doing some political benefits for Dukakis. So I got to mix both of those. John Arias came and vetted me. He said I was okay. And then I did the sound at her wedding.
Fantastic.
That was kind of interesting also.
I bet it was.
She was in a good mood.
Did you do the one in their backyard?
Yeah. Well, it was inside. She couldn't have it outside because the helicopters were hanging out. But yeah, that was fun.
I bet that was cool.
Yeah. I think, David, if I remember correctly, didn't we do the show with her for when Clinton was running for president as well? Didn't we do that at Ted Field's house?
That was a benefit.
I did something with her, not that I was mixing her, but I was mixing Barry, and it was Barry and her and David Foster at the Kodak Theater around the Clinton time somewhere.
Yeah.
I think it was Bruce Jackson was probably with her then. So Chris, can I tell you a quick story, Chris?
Absolutely.
So Chris, get this.
Kenny, before you start, just make sure it's Smithsonian worthy. All right, that's all.
Oh, it's definitely. So Chris, I worked for Paul Anka from 86 or 85 to 92 or so. You know who Paul Anka is, right? Okay. Very particular with the audio and everything, but I was working for him in the 80s, and we were in the middle of a Las Vegas run at the Golden Nugget, and he calls me up, says, he says, "Hey, I'm not feeling up to doing a show tonight." He's supposed to do a show. He says, "I'm going to cancel. You want to go see Julio with me over at Caesars?" I was like, "Sure." So I go with him to see Julio at Caesars. And I got to tell you, all I can remember of that show was how amazing it sounded, right? It was this amazing sound that I had never heard before because it was what I would call ethereal, but very tastefully done ethereal. Like, in other words, lots of reverb on things that you wouldn't normally have reverb on, and lots of long tails, and it just sounded so like Julio. It was just the Julio sound. And I was like so impressed, right? No, Artie Canjero worked before me, and he hired me. But anyway, so the point is, though, I saw Julio in the '80s sometime with Paul. With Paul, I was watching the show, and then fast forward to about almost 10 years later, I'm working for Anita Baker. Baker's finishing her tour right where Julio is getting ready to do a show, and John Cyril was the production manager. And I said, who's doing your sound these days? Isn't Harold Blumberg and Dan Castings doing it? He said, no, I just had to fire them last night. And I said, oh, well, I'm here with Anita if you want. It was at the same venue where we were finishing up the Anita Baker tour. I said, if you want, I can just stay here another couple days and do your show, and that way you don't have to look for somebody for 2 days to cover your 2-day gig. He was like, yeah, maybe. Anyway, a couple days go by because we had a lot of time, and he goes, yeah, sure, come down and do Julio's sound for the two days here at the Foxwoods, right? So I do the sound for Julio based on what I heard of you doing it at the at Caesar's Palace in Vegas. It was so great. I remember that Caesar's Palace show sounded so amazing. So I just was always aspiring to make it sound as good as that, and then. Long story short, I ended up working for Julio for like 2 years after that because he just was like, why get anybody different? You're doing okay. So, yeah, it was okay, So anyway, but it was all based on what I had heard of you doing it at Caesar's Palace, which sounded amazing. So that's what I wanted to tell you.
So I have a question. So now, whose idea, Chris? Was it your idea to put the front fills in the front of the house so we could hear the reverb coming back on the stage?
That was not my idea.
No. Kenny, you remember that?
When I started with him, there was no monitor engineer. There was, we were mixing monitors from front of house. There were really no monitors facing him when I first started with him. We just had big front fills facing the audience that he listened off of. And it just, one thing led to another. And after I left in '92, a lot of people came in and tried different things to try to give him what he wanted on stage and keep control of the mix in the house. It's an interesting project with him because he's very sensitive to everything that's going on. He hears everything in the room, and you can flown side fill monitors work great for him. I try to keep the monitor mix separate from the front of house, but he's listening to the house as well all the time. So
does he have perfect pitch?
He's pretty darn good.
David,
somebody invented a thing called pods and tags. I forget which is which, but some were speakers. I think it was from the house console.
Pods were from the side fills, tags were from the house.
Okay, there you go. Anyway,
I know that because I had to set him up for a whole year on the 1999 tour with John Godenzi.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
All right, somebody's got some echo going on now. This is not Smithsonian worthy.
It's probably my computer.
Okay.
Anyway, the pods and tags were really when I inherited the gig from from Dan Castings. It was at Foxwoods, and the Foxwoods crew already knew what the setup was. They had this row of UPAs that were facing back towards the stage with only reverb, vocal reverb in them, and then the tags were the, on the sides of the stage, and they had some kind of speaker that was, already set up, and I just turned it on, and he said, "Yeah, sounds great." So we just tried to emulate that everywhere else we went. It was pretty crazy.
So I was going to say I was mixing Julio at Caesars once. And the show was over, and I turned around, and Hank is sitting behind me watching the show. And he called me over, and he said it sounded great. So I said, yeah. And I was trying to say to myself, do I tell him I know Artie? Do I tell him I know Kenny? Maybe I shouldn't.
Right. That must have been after I got that gig somehow, and you were sort of filling in for me, right?
Yeah, you gave it to me.
That was a long period of time there. That's funny. Anyway, it was all based on what I had heard Chris do at Caesars in the '80s. It was so beautiful.
Well, thank you. We've
that is a brilliant comment. That's a brilliant compliment. to give him. I like this. This is, it's amazing. When I think about Kevin Bacon, now I don't know why you would think, what, Kevin Bacon? Where does he come out of? How is he Smithsonian worthy? But he came up with the concept of 6 degrees of separation, and it just seems like the degrees of separation between us is a lot less than 6. I mean, it's like, look how you guys have just, the ships in the night, how close you've crossed.
Very small world.
Agree.
Kenny, you told me a story about when you were playing with the you were doing the Rolling. Who was doing the Rolling Stones at the theater? Ladies and gentlemen, the Rolling. Who was
Kenny.
what?
Kenny.
Yeah, that was me. That was at the Ziegfeld in New York. Yeah,
You want to hear? You know my friend Peter. He was the guy. He was selling the merchandise. He was selling.
Come on,
the posters.
at that show?
At that show, yeah. He talks about it all the time. That was one of his first gigs.
Oh my gosh, that's funny.
Yeah, so they kind of, but the credibility in the room, of what we've all been doing. And, the interesting thing which I pick up from you guys is that, and I'll tell you my first gig. My first gig was in Santa Barbara at the Ventura Theater. And I had just gotten out of the military. I was a medic in the National Guard. And so I was working at the free clinic, and the singer of this band who was going to play right outside the door came in and had gonorrhea. And so as the medic, the doctor says, give him the shot. And he didn't want the shot, but anyway, I gave him the shot. And he said, hey, we're playing tomorrow night at Perfect Park. Why don't you come out? And at that point in time, I met the guy that did the sound system at that, and I had a car. I know that sounds like a crazy thing to say, that I had a car. And they had a gig the next night at the Ventura Theater where they were doing the Doobie Brothers. And they needed some extra space. They didn't have enough room in the truck, and they say, could we put some stuff in the car, and would you like to go see the Doobie Brothers? And at this point, they had listened to the music. It was back in 1970, 71, something like that. And so we get to the theater. We're all high as kites in those days in Santa Barbara, Ventura. And it turns out the engineer, or the guy, the sound man, didn't show up. So Jeff Cook, who had this, he said to me, hey, you want to, hey man, we need somebody to go out there and mix the sound. You want to do it? I said, sure. I was an AV guy in high school. I'll do this. And so I mixed the Doobie Brothers. Turned out only 15 people showed up to this concert. 15 people. And that was my first experience in mixing professional sound. And I got paid the gas money to get everybody back to Santa Barbara. But my point of this story is that it didn't grab me. It wasn't one of those things that I said, man, this is really what I want to do. But it seems like everybody else who got involved in it, it grabbed you, and you're doing it because you love what you're doing. It's a gig of love, and I really appreciate that from all of you, because I hear that from everybody, that, you're not doing it because you had to do it. You're doing it because it's something that you wanted to do. And you were talking, Bruce, about school. Well, you can't learn that in school. You can't, nobody's going to tell you what it is. That's one of the problems with school, is they never tell you what it is that you should be doing in your lifetime. They throw it against the wall, and they teach you how to think, supposedly, and then you're supposed to go out and figure out what it is. But I think today now that there's so much money involved in going and getting an education that people now really have to think twice. Do I really want to be indebted for the most of my life? Or do I want to figure out what it is I love doing with my life and then go out and do it? I think that would be something. You don't have to raise your hand, Bruce.
I don't want to interrupt. It's hard to everybody talking at the same time because it mutes people out.
Yeah.
But one of the things I noticed too is, and I'm sure a lot of you guys, when you're starting out, because we loved what we did, we didn't do it for money. It was like a hobby that after a while I was lucky enough to get paid to do, and I have found now when I talk to kids or whatever you want to call them about doing this, I said, listen, you got to go out. And I said this to my son when he was getting into, he was a drummer. I said, you got to do every gig. It doesn't matter if they pay you or not. You just need to go out and help and be a part of it, because A, you're going to learn a shitload of stuff. I says, B, you never know who's going to be there. And every single one of you guys, like myself, was at the right place at the right time. And if people said to me many times, you're so lucky, you're at the right place at the right time. And I said, luck only has this much to do with it. I did so many gigs for nothing just because I wanted to do them. I put myself in positions so that moment would go by. And you have to know to grab it when it goes by. And nobody thinks that way now. They don't want to show up unless they're getting paid. It's like, dude, you got the wrong attitude here. This is not about being paid. If you're being paid, you're lucky.
You are so right, Bruce.
Yeah.
So many of my bosses that I've had that exact attitude that you do. You're lucky to be working here. You should be paying me.
And you know what? I've told people before, I have spent the last 20 years of my life making really good money, and I've had a really great time. And because and knowing a really wonderful people like Ken and everybody that I've done so many shows with through the years, and anytime technology changes so fast, and anytime there's something going on with a piece of gear that I know somebody's working on a show, I've said many times and have done many times, you know what, I'm going to come, can I come out and help you on this gig? Well, I can't, it ain't about being paid. It's about being there and using this thing and helping you and watching you. And I'd rather you don't pay me because I don't want to feel like I have to be doing something. I want to be hanging out with you and watching you do this. Yeah. And it still happens. It hasn't happened in the last 8 months, of course, but I still have that attitude. I go do gigs for nothing if it's something I want to experience.
Well, that's very good. I'm hoping I have something for you to do.
It's called the passion of the gig.
And you know what? Yeah. And that does not exist with any of these young people. It's just
not quite. It's just.
I think it's.
Let's do this. Let's go run some sound.
I think it's an ethic thing, and a moral thing that's just not, I don't know what it is because I don't have that much experience with young people these days. But I do know one thing is that I really appreciate what and that's what makes us, I think, happier people, even though we're going through this really rough time, and we all are going through a rough time. This is something that is not what we all planned on. Like there's somebody in the room right now. He's one of the most successful guys in our industry. He's built up a reputation. He's made a great living. He's had many people, and he loves what he does for sure. But then one day I call him up and I say, what's that noise in the background? He says, well, I'm driving a truck. And when was the last time, Steve, when was the last time you drove a truck? Kenny, when was the last time you drove a truck before this year? I mean, that's one of the things, that when you think about it, but at this point in time, almost any one of us could say, you know what, I'm pretty much done. I've done whatever I've done the things that I set out to do. I don't have anything really more to prove. And so, I think I'll just say, hey, adios and thanks for the memories. But the reality is that because we all love what we do, we're all hanging in there, and we're all in a position that we can hang in there. I'm always curious, Kenny, I know you came in towards the end because you were busy, and I really appreciate you being here. But we're putting this one in the Smithsonian in case you didn't know. And what we're talking about is our first gigs, how we got into the business in the first place. And I'm sure you might remember how you decided that this was something that you really wanted to do when you were a kid.
Oh, you're reaching here.
Yeah.
Well, for me, I ended up decided that music history was not for me, and I decided to change majors. Ended up going to Belmont, and then I was playing in business and stuff, doing some song plugging and stuff like that, and working in a demo studio. And then someone said, we need a sound engineer to go out and mix, go out and set up PA. I was driving the truck, setting up PA and mixing for Don Williams. So I said, sure, I can go do that. And ended up there. And then when I came back, the company had issues and realized that there was no place in town really to buy pro audio gear. And it was all the studio leftover stuff and MI stuff and hi-fi stores. So I started Spectrum with someone else, and I started selling microphones and things people needed. That's how I kind of ended up where I am today.
So who was the first big band that you mixed? Who was the first artist that you mixed that made an impression on you?
made an impression.
Yeah, like didn't pay you. I know. I mean, that's it. You said, this is you sitting behind the console, and you said, "Man, am I glad that I just made this decision to be in this business." This. It can't get any better.
Well, that's hard to say because I never really dreamed I was going to do live sound. Primarily, I just started into it and went down the road and just said I can do that and, just keep going and make things together. Now, there's things that you do in the business that, dealing with bankers and other stuff like that is not my idea of being in the business, being fun.
Yeah.
I think the bigger part was, coming back to driving a truck. I've driven a truck forever, and stuff there. And so you guys do something in order to get to the job that you want to do, the things you want to do. The one that always frustrates me is when I have kids say, well, I got a college degree. That's beneath me to drive a truck or to load the truck or something like that. And I was like, man, you don't need to be here if they're going to be that way.
An interesting thing is I remember when I was 13 years old, and I grew up in I guess quite an upscale, middle class upscale family in New York, and one of my friends was a stock boy at a supermarket. It was called Wallbaum's. And so he got me the job as a stock boy, and I'm piling the cans. I'm loving what I'm doing. I mean, I feel like I'm really accomplishing something, And the manager of the store comes over to me and says to me, hey, the janitor didn't show up today. Will you go sweep the floor? So I said, sure, I'll sweep the floor. And, and I went out and swept the floor, and then I went back and started stacking the cans. And a little later that afternoon, he comes up to me and says, hey, could you come back and sweep the floor again? I said, no problem, swept the floor. At the end of the day, my shift, he comes over to me and says, listen, the janitor quit, and we'd like to make you, in charge of sweeping the floor. And I quit. I said, I am above sweeping the floors. I don't want it. And so I went home that night, very proud that I stood up for myself. And I went home, and my uncle said, how was work today? And I said, you're going to be really proud of me. I told him the story, and he said, you asshole, you go back there, you beg for that job. I don't care how you do it, but you get that job. I said, I'm above sweeping floors. And he says to me, you're going to go back and sweep those floors, or I'm telling you right now, when you come work for me, the first job I'm going to give you is sweeping the floors. And when I turned 17, he asked me to come work for him. We get there, and the first thing he does is hands me a broom. And he remembered that, and he handed me the broom, and I remembered it too. The second I had that broom, and I said, what the hell? And he said, listen to me and listen carefully to what I'm about to tell you, and don't ever forget this. He says, when you run a company, you need to know what every job is and how it works. Because if you don't, when you give someone the broom to sweep, you won't know how long that takes or how hard it is, so you won't have any judgment of whether or not they're bullshitting you or not. And I never forgot that. And, so sweeping the floors, driving the truck, whatever it is, when I hire somebody now to work for me, I always tell them the same thing. I'm not going to give you any assignment that I wouldn't do myself, whatever it is. If it's taking out the trash, if it's opening the mail, whatever it is, I have done it and I will do it. And that, I think, is something that is inbred in us,
The reason I like to go out and sweep the floor, that means that everything's out working, sending me money back in.
An ulterior motive. I like that.
I call it work ethic.
Yeah.
That means I'm the only one left in the warehouse to go sweep the floor, and then there's nothing on the floor, so I can sweep it.
That's good. Hey, so Raul, do you want to share? Do you want to share your for the Smithsonian, for the episode for the Smithsonian of your first gig?
Well, I'll make it short because mine is probably a little shorter. I got very lucky. Because now I've been working for Harman JBL for 20 years, but my very first PA was a JBL rig in 1986 in Puerto Rico. I didn't know that. I was setting up big JBL custom PAs for DJs, never thinking that someday I would actually end up working at JBL. And I studied music. That started So engineering school came along and ended up at Purdue, and I was very lucky because I got to see some really great people come through and watch them, do this beautiful thing we call audio. Dave Natal, and I'm sure Ken came by, and that's where I met Skin and a bunch of other people. Out of that, I ended up at Trump Plaza, and that's what I was asking Kenny if he had been there in '92 with Anka, because he was Audi was at front of house, and that's one of those memorable weeks watching Audi do things that now so many people take for granted, with stereo delays and effects and augmented bands on a DAT tape and things like that. Got to try to mix monitors for Engelbert and meet all the mixes and walk off the stage because, let's just say, we had a disagreement. And, by that time, we all know about the stuff that, Chris was doing with Julio. I went off to do Broadway tours for the next, did my MFA, and then I went to do Broadway for 4 years. And then I was living in Seattle at that point in time, and I spent a lot of times with Carlson Audio. That's where I met Ken Porter. You came through with Promise Keepers, believe it or not. Sherman took me to meet you. We had lunch in some tent somewhere. And I was impressed. I said, how does he make all of these PAs work? You had MSL prototypes, you had KF900 prototypes. I'm like, these guys got them all. And then Christopher Cross, Chip Trick. And then that's when they just came call me for the Julio Iglesias tour. I was supposed to be a monitor guy. Fly to Brazil, see him at the XL4 front of house. He goes, can you drive this console? I go, sure. You give me a radio. You walked around, we tuned the PA. I never went back to the stage. 33 countries later, I was still with him at front of house. I got to mix monitors on the very last show, 2000. And then I came to JBL in 2000, and I've been with Harman since. I take a sabbatical every other year to go do a tour, and that's been great. It's given me the opportunity to go spend time with Dave Natal and Cubby, and back with Skin on the Barry Manilow tour. And so, I find myself very, very fortunate to get to learn from all these people that I now call colleagues and peers. So, and Chris and I go sailing now, which is, how better can that be?
It's not bad at all. It's not bad at all.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah. So, what's going on in Miami right now? What's happening over there? Now that they can have concerts.
I'm frankly a little concerned, Chris, with this opening of restaurants 100% and all the kids going back to school. I'm freaking out. I told all the guys on my sailing team, I said, look, all of you are going to wear masks all the time on the boat, racing or not racing. I don't care if you're choking, you're going to wear a mask.
Yeah, I've heard stories of bartenders taking things into their own hands and making patrons wear masks, kicking half of them out, just because nobody's enforcing it. So there's no discipline. There's no, we're not going to get over it this way.
We're not out of it. I mean, it looks, the numbers, call it whatever you want to call it, open whatever you want to open, but we're not, at least down here, we're not out of it.
No. So, the responsible places, you're having to wear a mask to get in. I'm a little bit more relaxed when we get out on the boat because there's so much fresh air out there, and I'm usually with the same crew all the time. So
yeah, it's exactly what we're doing on our team. We don't have new people on the crew. People that are with us are pretty much isolating themselves, but even then we're still wearing a mask on board. So
yeah, we've been doing the signal boat thing quite a bit, and wearing masks the whole time. So it gets a little warm under there. It's still
it sure does
90 degrees.
Better than the alternative.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, much better than the alternative, And here in Vegas, or in Las Vegas, they've just expanded the occupancy now to 250. And so they're going to let people into the Raiders Stadium or the Allegiant Stadium right now when the Raiders play. They're also going, UNLV is going to be playing. So they're keeping it down to a percentage. But now they're saying they're going to open up clubs to 250 people. So there's going to start being shows over here. And of course, we're very concerned over here with the spread of the COVID. But the truth be told is that there is a group of people here in Nevada, And Nevada is a right to work state. Nevada is, a gun toting state. It's all those things. And I'm in this group called Locals Love Las Vegas. And one guy says, if the governor says it's okay not to wear a mask, will you wear a mask? And thousands of comments are coming out. And the debate got so heated that one guy told me, why don't you come over my house and show me how to put on a mask? And he sent me his address, and then he sent me a picture of a guy going like this with guns. And I said, holy crap. And that was when I said, no, but the reality is that I think a mask is important to wear. But what I've found is that if somebody really is anti-mask, you can't really convince them that, right now, at this very point in time, that the science agrees with you, because they don't really care. They just feel right now that the money aspect of it, the fact that they're starving to death here in Las Vegas, especially in Las Vegas, where so much is involved in the Strip and the entertainment and the tourists here, and all of that has been basically cut to smithereens. But we've got a problem out in the United States. United Airlines is letting go what? How many people? 30,000 or 40,000 people. Disney is letting go 30,000 people. Another company I just read about is letting go a huge amount of people. And until we can get back into doing what it is that we were accustomed to do before the COVID came around, as an industry. Yeah, Chris, you don't have to raise your hand.
Jan, I just sent you an email so you could share this photo.
You could share it.
It's a safe, clean. Well, I don't have it on my computer. I got it on my phone. So I don't know if you can get it and take a look at it. But this device, I was at a Digico demo this morning at a company called Mix3 in North Miami. And they had this machine set up, this concert promoter who also works with them. So this machine is like the size of and I don't think it's going to show up this way. Did you get the email yet?
Is it a link?
No, I sent you a photo, an email photo.
No, it wasn't. Nothing's attached. I'm looking at it right now. I don't see it attached. Oh, wait, there it is. Sanitation?
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah. So what this device is.
Give me 1 second and I will share my screen with you guys so that you can see. You could see this. You could see this. All right, you see it?
Okay.
Can you see it, guys?
Yeah.
So if you look on the left-hand side, you'll see a red button, a green button, and you'll see a screen. You get within 2 feet of that with your face, and it takes your temperature. It takes a picture of you, and then you can enter into this little closet, this little chamber, and it's filled with, I'm not sure the chemical composition, but it's supposedly something that's some chloride thing that's going to sanitize you within 5 seconds. I don't know if it works or not, but it looks like an interesting concept. I went in it, went out of it, and went to the demo. So it might be something worth looking into.
Hey, Chris, I saw that everybody was wearing masks on that event, that session you were at.
Yeah.
I guess if you're asymptomatic and you don't have a fever, it doesn't. You still have it, but the machine doesn't do much.
Well, it being a mixing console demo, and we're testing out the mustard and the chili 6 and everything, and so it just, your voice sounds a little bit different going through a mask, but you learn how to compensate that with the EQ, and we got on with the demo pretty well.
Very cool. Well, look into it. We will look into it. I'm sure of it. I've noticed that more and more companies right now to survive are selling more and more different things that we would expect from a sound and lighting company. Today I got an email from Mountain Productions. They're selling boots. They're actually selling boots. And, I thought that was kind of strange. I've been thinking about what it is I want to sell, other than sound, light, staging, and video. And I just haven't come up with the right thing that would feel good to me. But I'm sure that there is, I'm sure there are things out there that we can all incorporate in our world that our customers are already built in and baked in. And that might be something that we could think about for sure as we progress. I really appreciate everybody coming today. Once again, I will say that you guys make it happen, because if it wasn't for you, I would just be sitting here thinking about Bank of America right now and cursing them. But for those who missed it, you have to come back another time. Hopefully, I'll never be talking about this again, because as of this week, I'm hoping that this is going to be my last experience with Bank of America. But the reality is that I thank you all for coming, and I thank you all for participating the way you did. And this show is definitely probably going to be the best show the Smithsonian has ever had in their archives, and probably just like all the other shows that hit the Smithsonian archives, nobody ever watches them. But so your secrets are safe. Your secrets are safe. Anyway, is there anything that anybody else feels like sharing before we cut off the live stream? And so I think if that's it, I want to thank you people at home for watching on the live stream. We're going to, if you want to be part of what happens next, you have got to be in the room. And so you know how to get here. And that's all I will say. So thank you so much for listening in on YouTube and Facebook. And